What is up, guys? DT Ninja here for you guys my RuroKen Hokkaido Arc Chapter 48 discussion. Okay, guys, a big shout out to Chris JP20 for his awesome color scans as always that I used in the intro and throughout this video. Now, big news for Kenshin fans all around the world. July 6th will be the new anime release. Cannot wait for that. Just a little look at what it looks like. This is my limited edition postcard for the new anime. I just wanted to share that. Yeah, so that's coming soon. Also, I'm currently working on Hokkaido Arc Chapter 52, so that should be done pretty soon, and I'm going to be working on 53. So hopefully I finally get caught up. But yeah, after taking about 5 or 6 months break from the actual editing, I finally am almost caught up. So let's get to the chapter. There are quite a few questions. Some of them are simple, and other ones are more thought-provoking and hopefully more interesting. So let's get to it. Chapter 48. So number 1, what does this title of the chapter, what does the title of the chapter mean? What is the meaning behind the title? Now, when we talk about the title, we're talking about this scan right here. This is my special calendar, by the way. So it's got all kinds of illustrations from the Hokkaido arc throughout each month. It's got scans throughout each of the chapters as well. So anyways, the introduction of this one, so yeah, anyways, really neat. They're all Kenshin, but there are scans throughout. But anyways, this is the title page from chapter 48. Now the chapter is titled, What's Beyond Persistence Is. What is beyond persistence? Or what's beyond persistence is. And that is the question, right? What is beyond persistence? And so persistence obviously means doing the same thing over and over without ever changing. So this is actually about Hajime Saito's way of life. So as you know, the Wolf of Mibu, he continues on living through Akusok-san, and also we learn in the next chapter that he is actually living a life similar to, Hijikata. So we'll learn more about that in the next, my next review. But yeah, that it's interesting because actually in chapter 49, the actual words, that phrase is used. So why don't we look at it? Okay, so let's look at the title page for the volume here, and then I will show you let's see, where is it at? Okay, here is the volume title right here. You can see it's large right here. So it says, what's beyond persistence, basically, right? And then this one right here, and this is the next chapter, so I'm giving you a little sneak peek. So you have Kenshin and Nagakura is talking, and you can see the same words being used here. What is beyond persistence? And he says, what is beyond persistence is what we're all fearing, and that is a glorious death for Saito. So that's just a little, kind of spoiler there, but at the same time, if you just continue living life through Akusok-san like this, of course, you're looking for death, right? You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's just how it is for, him. That's just how he's lived his life. Even though he's, Goro Fujita now, that's his life. And we've heard that over and over. Nagakura's changed. He's no longer a wolf. But even Abe was curious, how long are you going to live like this? And he said, till the day I die. So it's almost like he's unchanging, and it's just continuously. And this is interesting because he gets beaten badly in this chapter. Like it's an outright loss for him. We saw him lose to Byakuya. He gets his arm broken. Well, he gets his arm re-broken in this chapter. So, anyways, that's very interesting to me. That it's actually because sometimes the author uses the title because it's in the chapter, but it's actually because he just continues this way. We see the result, what could happen in the future. But the fact that it's in chapter 49 that those words are used, I thought that was interesting. It also gives me, the idea that maybe the Hokkaido arc is actually meant to be really read through the volumes. The volumes make it really shine through with the author's work. The author really does a great job, but reading through the volumes is how it's meant to be. So hopefully I can put together some of more of the volumes for you guys. But yeah, it definitely works for these chapters that they're together, right? So it's not just one individual chapter. Now there are some certain chapters that do work on their own well, but this one you need both chapters to fully understand what the title is implying. But we know Saito is in trouble. We know he has a broken sword, so it's pretty obvious that it's about Saito. Also, another reason, I mentioned this in the last video, but you can see Kenshin holding the sword almost in the Gatotsu stance. Now, it's not completely, the Gatotsu stance a little further back, but look at his fingers. So, you've never really seen Kenshin do that before. So, it's almost like a little slight, a nod to Saito. So, anyway, something I noticed. Number 2, do you think Kenji will become a swordsman in the future? Now, I know this is kind of a funny question because he's just a little kid right now, right? But the fact that they showed him with the sword, even though it's a toy, and we got the, Aran made him the toy, but, Cho put the rock in there and he still hit, Ashitaro in the head, and I thought that was great. But the fact that it showed Aran and Sojiro next to him talking about the sword, it made me wonder, wow, and especially because it says a future master in the making. I thought maybe he's nodding that maybe Kenji will become a swordsman in the future. And if that is true, who will be his master? What do you guys think? I think there's maybe 3 possible contenders for that. Sojiro, that would be a great way for him to find a path. He's been looking for his own path all this time. Maybe it's teaching someone else how, his skills, that would be very interesting. Now, I'm not talking about assassin skills. I'm just talking about things that could be useful to, someone that wants to protect themselves. Ashitaro could be another, master for him, or even Yaiko. Now, I think Yaiko is going to focus more on the dojo, but Yaiko would be one of the contenders. I just think that the fact that Ashitaro and Kenji get along so well, they relate to each other, they love food. Sojiro and him really get along really well. I mean, Kenji gets along with everyone, but there's just a certain, chemistry between Sojiro and Kenji that would be very interesting if he did, teach Kenshin's, kid. And that's his path. Maybe that's what, he's been, decided to fight alongside him because he's going to learn, this is my path. Anyways, what do you guys think about it? Alright, so number 3. How did Nagakura know that Kenshin would come to Tamoto Photo Studio? Now, what I mean by that is Kenshin goes to the studio. As we know, he has been, he's been talking with Tamoto Sensei about where to find the whereabouts of his father-in-law, Kaoru's father. Now, how did Nagakura know that Kenshin would be there? Was it like explained to him, or is there something else I don't know about? Is it Nagakura actually knows like what's going on? Like he showed up, Kenshin's shocked. He's like, "What?" Obviously he's shocked because Saito's not there, but I mean the fact that he's waiting for him, sipping tea. I have to think maybe he's friends with Tomoto, and maybe he was one of the people that Tomoto was trying to find to help find Kaoru's father. That would be very interesting because if Kenshin really sat down and explained, hey, we're here to find Kaoru's father, maybe even Nagakura has run into him and even knows him. I mean, how it could be possible, Nagakura is living in Hokkaido. We know Kaoru's father's been there for a while, so it's very possible they've crossed paths at some point. But that's something interesting to think about. Okay, the next one, number 4. What is the real reason that Ito Isagawa of the Kinkaku Heki wants to avenge Usui? In this chapter and in the previous chapter at the end, we learn that he is the brother disciple. Basically, he calls him his brother, but he was a disciple alongside the same master, training with Usui. Now, as we all know, Saito killed Usui in the Kyoto arc, right? And we didn't really think about it much at all, but Usui was not really a likable guy. I mean, he tried to kill Misao. Obviously, Anji saved her. But, I mean, who would really mourn for this guy, right? I mean, it just doesn't seem like a guy you would really want to take revenge for, But and you think about it, it's very interesting. Why? Because in chapter 2, we see that guy, we see Ito just staring at Saito, basically pissed off. So we know that connection to Usui is there, and that's what really makes him angry. But is there a reason behind it? Is it more than just him killing Usui? Is it because Usui and him were so close at one point, and then when he went off to Kyoto, something happened and changed, but he's dead already, and maybe there was conflict between the two? I don't know. Maybe it's just honor. We hear that. I will restore Usui's honor. That could be the reason, but is there something more than just honor? Because he did say honor towards the end. I will restore his honor. Bring a new sword. So very interesting stuff, but I think there's possibly two things. There could be just honor, but it also could be a hidden story behind it, a backstory between Usui and Ito. Very interesting stuff. Now, number 5. What is the secret behind the Golden Genbu? The Golden Genbu is the secret golden Tenbei and Rochin. It's basically the name of these treasured weapons, right? It's similar to Usui, but they're even greater. They're superior. So how are these more superior than the ones that Usui used? One thing, they're covered in eyes, right? We notice they're all covered in eyes. We have to assume that those eyes are a very important secret of this, weapon, this treasured weapon of the Ryukyu martial arts, the eye, the eye power or the eyesight of Ryukyu martial arts. Now, what's interesting about the eyesight Ryukyu martial arts is that you see these eyes everywhere, but Usui didn't have eyes, right? He lost his sight. And when we first saw, the mind's eye or whatever, we thought that it was because of his, the eye of the heart or whatever. We thought that's why the eyes were shown, but no, this was the actual name of his school, of the martial arts school they both trained at. So what's the secret? I thought that would be interesting because the Golden Genbu shines very brightly. It has this shine to it. So it's obviously in gold, right? So those eyes could be reflecting off each other. They're everywhere, right? There's one on the RuroKen, there's, on the staff of the RuroKen, there's one on the Tenbei shell, the turtle shell. So, I mean, they could reflect off of each other and, just kind of, I don't know, maybe blind the opponent at some point. Or maybe that's just part of kind of the diversion, because we know that Usui used diversions. He was able to sense where someone is coming by the reflexes, in the muscles. So that's very interesting, though. I like the fact that we got the actual name of the martial arts school. So I thought that was cool. And hopefully we get a backstory. So that leads into the next question. What happened to Ito in the past with his brother disciple, Usui? We all know he went to Kyoto. We all know he had a fight with Shishio and lost his eyesight and gained this supersonic hearing. And that's where the Eye of the Heart came in. And that's how he was able to become the Jupongatana, one of the Jupongatana. Now, there's something there. I feel like maybe he returned after losing his eyes, and maybe even after gaining his supersonic hearing or whatever, his Eye of the Heart, and he went back to Ryukyu. He went back and maybe he, attacked his master, killed him, and maybe even Ito. Maybe that's why he has that scar. That's the next question. How did he get that scar? Is that self-inflicted, or is that a battle wound from Usui himself? Now that begs the question, wouldn't you be angry at Shishio then? Because he's the one that caused Usui to change, not Saito. But Saito is the one who killed him, so I guess it is the honor. It goes back to honor. But it's interesting. I would love to learn, what happened between them in the past. That would be very interesting. I hope we get that. Maybe we get their master and what they all learned and the secret behind their technique. At least what the fundamentals of it is. So that would be really interesting. But yeah, a backstory between them would be great. I hope we get that in the rematch between Saito and Ito, because I feel like we are going to get a rematch between the two, because this one was pretty one-sided. Ito just comes in and Saito doesn't have a sword, so Nagakura throws him his sword, and if you notice, his sword is also cracked, and so he gets it, but he protects Nagakura's sword. Even after getting hit with the RuroKen multiple times, he falls into the cliff with the water, and basically it's a bridge. He falls off the bridge, and he protects the sword, but he re-breaks his arm, his shoulder, I think he hurts. So yeah, it's very interesting, but I feel like Saito didn't put his full heart into it. He didn't have a great weapon, and that's where the next question comes into play. If Saito believes in Akusok-san so much, why doesn't he have a sword he treasures like Nagakura does? Because remember, in the battle with Rogo the Skull, he revealed, I have not used this since the Ikadaya incident. And that means he's been keeping the sword, just on his belt all this time for a certain opponent, and it was that opponent. And we saw how badass he is. He cut the dude in half, and of course, we learned there were two people, and that's the only way they survived. But yeah, that was just really interesting. So I wondered, why does Saito doesn't have a sword of himself? I know the swords are banned, but a police officer has to use a government weapon, I suppose, right? But you would think, being someone of Akusok-san, he would hide it somewhere or have it, ready at some point, even if it's a small dagger or some sort, I would just think that. But why does he continue to use these weak government swords when his techniques clearly are far above and smash those swords every time? I mean, we've seen it with Kenshin and Saito Batosai, that fight at the dojo. We saw it in the fight with Rogo. We saw it with Byakuya. We saw all these different instances where Saito's sword is not enough. And, sometimes it is enough, but it ends up breaking every time. That's my feeling on that. I just hope that he finds a great sword. Which leads to our last question. How will Saito get a new sword? What will this sword look like? And what will it be called? Well, he just continues to use these government swords because he's a police officer. I get that. He's Goro Vegeta. He can't use, one of those swords from the Bakumatsu, but you would think he would, because, Nagakura, he's a government official too, and he has, 2 swords. So why can't Saito? It just doesn't make sense to me. It just seems like you would think he would be able to do that. I hope he finds a great sword, but where will he find it? Let's just say this is a scenario. What if, after being released from the hospital, he walks along, just kind of carefree, walking around. He just happens to stumble upon a Kenkaku Heki, okay? And maybe he challenges him, maybe he doesn't, okay? This Kenkaku Heki is different, though. He doesn't outright just start attacking him. He starts talking to him, and it is revealed that it is not actually who he thinks it is. Maybe he finds out it's someone that can help him, and what if it's Koshijiro? That would be crazy. So, Saito meets Koshijiro. I don't know where he would meet him, but if he was disguised as a Kenkaku Heki, that would be interesting. Maybe he doesn't want to use the sword he has, and he just, says, I have something waiting for me in Tokyo to protect. I no longer need this sword. So he tosses it to him, and that's where he gets the sword. And maybe this sword is actually a relic of the Seinon War, in which he fought and killed people trying to rebel, the Satsuma Rebellion. And this is what caused him to have that, crisis where, his death had to be faked, and he had to leave for Sapporo because, something happened with the government, and, this is, very interesting thing to think about. What if Saito actually comes across Kaoru's father, and his father somehow has one final sword, and it happens to be a sword used in, the previous years in another war? How interesting would that be? And then we could get, an introduction into the Seinon War where he used that, and then you could introduce, this is what happened, and then just cut it off. We could learn about it more later when he meets, the others. But that would be very interesting if that were to happen. I would love that. What do you guys think? Who do you think is going to help him get a sword? And if so, what will it look like? Obviously, it's got to have that curvature for the Gatotsu to be very effective, as we learned from Nagakura. But anyways, guys, that's my discussion. Before we end this, though, I want to share, this is what Chapter 49 looks like. We're going to be looking at it probably next week, because, as you know, the reviews, I pretty much look at the scans of, I review the scans of the chapter, which I have right here. Someone prominent is going to arrive from the government, from the Meiji government. And also we'll get more from the Kenkaku Heki. I also have chapter 50, so I will be able to review the next few chapters the same way I've been doing. And anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and look forward to the latest Kenshin. And that's pretty much it.